Luister vandaag de hele dag naar alle ins en outs van Agile en Scrum. Op Nieuw Business Radio. Live op The Agile Chef. Powered by Xebia.
We gaan wel even nu de knop op. Ik moet ook even in mijn hoofd even de knop omzetten. So we're going to switch to English because Jeff Sutherland is in our studio at New Business Radio. Jeff, welcome. It's an honor to have you here in the studio. About 3/4 of a year ago, I started reading your book, which isn't called Scrum.
Yeah.
Good title. And in fact, I already told you some minutes ago when I saw you that it's narrated because I listen to all the books in the car or in the train, and it's narrated by your son. So I've been listening for 6.5 hours to your son, who is actually a quite excellent narrator. Well, going back about 21 years, because 21 years Scrum was born. For our listeners, because here at the Agile Chef, everybody knows what Scrum is in essence, but for our listeners at home, some of them probably do not know what it is. Nicole already explained the basics of Scrum, but I would like to go back with you 21 years to the moment that Scrum saw its first life light. So, what was the spark that made you create Scrum?
Okay, I think it goes back even further than that because as you know from the book, I spent 11 years as a fighter pilot in the Air Force, then 11 years as a professor in a medical school, and it was only then that I was pulled into industry, and that was back in 1983. And coming out of the medical school as an expert in complex adaptive systems and systems theory, and having done a lot of computing, mathematical modeling in medicine, and working with Bell Labs and seeing how their small teams worked, I was pulled into a big banking company to help them with the future technologies. And I looked at what they were doing with their projects, and their projects tended to be late. And when they were late, the managers would try to have more reports, have more meetings, have more micromanagement. And I looked at that, and the dynamics of that were just to make the projects later. So I went into the CEO and I said, I'm just a medical school professor, but I have to tell you, those guys on the floor don't look like the guys I work with at Bell Labs. And that way of working is not the way to do it. I said, why don't you give me the worst business unit in the bank? I'll show you how to fix it. And
what was the worst one?
It was the unit that was rolling out automated teller systems in 150 banks all over North America, and it was a new technology for them. So the bank was struggling. The revenue was much less than expenses were 30% more than revenue. They were losing money, a lot of red ink. And I said, I need everybody. I need sales. I need marketing. I need everyone, the software developers, the install people, the mainframe guys, and we'll get them all in one team. We'll split them into small teams of 4 or 5 people. And I said, what I'm going to do is show them how to land a project, just like we train a new fighter pilot how to land an airplane. You practice over and over again until you can nail it. We're going to start the week for every team. They're going to have a prioritized backlog. We're going to have somebody from product marketing that prioritizes that list. And at the end of the week, every team is going to be live. Whatever it is that they're building, whether it's in marketing or it's software, it's live. And we're going to practice that every week until we can nail that landing. Less than 6 months, that was the most profitable business unit in the bank. That was 1983. It was the first prototype of Scrum.
Wow. And because what you are describing is maybe the backbone of Scrum, and it still is. So how did you come up with that? Where did you get it? Did you read it somewhere, or was it something that you've learned in your fighter pilot years?
People have said to me I do things naturally that are unnatural, but from a point of view of a fighter pilot, they are natural. So we're trained to instantaneously respond to bad things happening, and it's more important to respond, even if it's a wrong response, than no response, because no response, you could be dead.
Yeah.
So, I would go into, it could be a company, it could be a situation, I would be like, you can't do that. And they were like, well, why not? Because
Because you can't do that.
bad things are going to be happening really soon. So the ability to know, instantaneously, this is not going to work. We need to go in a different direction. It's part of what John Boyd, the world's greatest fighter pilot, he taught the Marines. How do you think about strategy? How do you think about looking at what's happened, instantaneously changing your direction, decisively acting, and constantly doing that? Looking, acting, changing all the time. You need to do that to survive. And it turns out that this is pretty much the way that Taiichi Ono worked at Toyota. Mm-hmm. And I was at Toyota recently because in Europe here, the CIO is trying to move everything to Scrum. And I was having some discussion with this management about, they still have some big documents, instead of just enough, which it would be a lean thing. Yeah. And I remember one of the meetings I said to him, I said to the management team, I said, what would Taiichi Ono say if he was in this meeting? And they would say, he'd be outraged. Yeah, I said, well, why don't you do why don't you do what your founder told you to do? Because they knew what he would say.
Well, that's a good question to get the founder, the spirit of the founder back into the company.
After 2 days, I felt like I was channeling Taiichi Ono in all the meetings. But anyway, that kind of way of working, just in time, just enough, just in time, is fundamental to a fighter pilot. And being in the medical school and learning and being trained in complex systems and how they evolve and how to change them through small increments, like, genetic mutation. I was in cancer research. Genetic mutation alters cells. And how can you move a system through several states? How can you make it better instead of worse? This is fundamental to Scrum.
Yeah. And is that the cells evolving? Is that maybe also the basis of Scrum itself?
Because it is
small teams, and they are well.
Yeah. See, so
they're performing even better every time they evolve.
What we want to do is every sprint, every week or 2 weeks or however long the sprint is, we want to make one change in that team, a change that we think will make it better. And if we do that every sprint, the team will start to accelerate. And that's fundamental to Scrum. It's also fundamental to lean product development at Toyota. It's
maybe even fundamental for human beings.
Yeah, it's fundamental that you're
sounds like my kids.
It's learning through experience, but it's more than that, because it's using experience to drive a more positive outcome, instead of more negative. Yeah.
Well, Jeff Sutherland is not the only one in the studio, but because we also have Nicole Belidos in the studio. Nicole, you practice Scrum. You help customers of Xebia implement Scrum. What is the best performance ratio that you have seen within Scrum teams? Yeah, I know I ask difficult questions.
I've seen, usually I look at happiness, and I've seen really unhappy, demotivated people become really, really happy. And performing and motivated, and people who wanted to quit the company actually stayed. I've also seen people who were kind of hidden in little corners, just kind of doing their, day-to-day job and leaving at 4:30, get into Scrum teams and really blossom and get energy and really grow. And I don't have numbers, but that's the best things I've seen.
Well, yes, those are great numbers.
Yeah, I think so. Yes, so with Scrum, other capabilities are needed, other types of personalities. So you see some people who, were not valued very much. When they start doing Scrum, they grow, and people are like, "Oh, wow, I didn't know he had it in him." Yes.
And is it for all types of people, all types of personalities?
You also see people having or wanting to leave once we implement Scrum, because you want servant leadership, you want sharing, you want teamwork, and some people don't like that, especially people who have been in management positions or have been project managers who are very much used to command and control type of activities. They don't fit in anymore.
Wow. Okay. So how do you solve that, Jeff? Because there are a lot of managers.
Well,
I read that in Holland, on about 7 or 8 million people working, we have 1 million managers.
Really?
Well,
Yeah.
A good example, it's all about coaching. When I became CTO of what is now GE Healthcare, I had 40 or 50 managers. And when I took over, I got them all in the room, and I said, we're gonna do Scrum, and what that means is that if you're a leader, you're some kind of Scrum master, and you're probably all going to also be on a team. So you'll be a team member and you'll be a Scrum master. So I want you to figure out who the team should be and what team you're going to be the Scrum master on. And here's the way Scrum masters work. It was interesting because the most senior vice president there, who thought he should have my job, came to me 2 weeks later. He said, Jeff, now that I'm a leader of the people, I don't have the time to do all the paperwork. I got all this budget stuff and performance appraisals and all this stuff. I don't have time for that. And I said to him, who was leading the people when you were pushing all that paper? And he said, I guess no one.
Oh.
So I said, thank God we finally have a leader. And I'm going to get you one of the line managers to be like your executive officer. We used to have those in the Air Force. I often was like an executive officer to the base commander. And I did all the dirty work so the commander could lead the people, right? Mm-hmm. And so that kind of model was naturally to me to the Air Force. The leadership is visionary, setting goals for the people, inspiring them to reach for it. It's not micromanaging them. It's not pushing the paper. It's not. In the Air Force, we have low level people do that.
Yeah.
So it is a big change, but it is much more fun and a much more growth experience for a manager to work in that kind of mode, and they do need coaching to get there. So at that company, I did not lose a single manager.
Wow. Well, after the next song, I would really like to know how you did that, how you managed to keep everybody on board. And of course, one of the foundations of Scrum, also because I've really read the book, I did my homework, is that one of the principles is do 80% of the value in 20% of the time. So we'll be talking with Jeff Sutherland and Nicole Belidos after Lionel Richie, Running with the Night. Running with the Night, Lionel Richie bij Nieuw Business Radio, live vanaf de Agile Chef.
In samenwerking met Xebia is Nieuw Business Radio vandaag de hele dag live op die Agile Chef in Zaandam.
Yeah, and in the studio we are still speaking in English because in the studio we have Jeff Sutherland and Nicole Belidos, and we're talking about Scrum. And the excellent thing is that Jeff is the co-founder, I should say, of Scrum, because you did it in a cooperation. Before the break, we were talking about Scrum, how it developed from I think 1983 when we went back to. So we are in a bit of a time machine. And now we're here in 2016, and Scrum is being used a lot in IT sector. And one of the things that I'm really interested in, Jeff, is it works in IT. It works very good in IT. But does it also work in other environments, like say within a factory?
Yeah, well, if you look back at the origins of Scrum, when we formalized it back in 1993, actually, even before I met Ken Schwaber, we were impacted by a paper by two Japanese business school professors, and they were looking at lean manufacturing teams. And the type of work they saw, the type of cross-functional teams working closely together that they saw, reminded them of the game of rugby. And they said, we're going to call that Scrum project management. They're looking at lean product development in hardware at places like Honda, Toyota, 3M in the United States. And we said that's perfect because they not only describe how the teams work, but how the managers set up the teams, motivate the teams. And so
it started out in manufacturing.
Started in
the basis.
hardware, the idea.
Ah, okay. So how would it look like? Like, let's say in Holland we have still one a semiconductor factory, which is in Nijmegen, a big factory, and in fact it's one of my customers. So you can give me some free advice. How would it work? Because it's what these guys do is very complex with a lot of different machines who do stuff that I cannot describe with atom bombing on the microchips. So how would it look like within such a factory?
Well, I probably had some of those guys in my class earlier this week because they were asking me the same question. What I could tell them is I have had guys in Scrum training that build chips, and they describe me how they can iterate a design for a chip and produce a new chip every week. It's not a production chip where we're going to make 1 million, for the masses. But if you want a real chip that you can test real software working against the hardware, and this was 5 years ago, I had guys in Scrum training saying, I can turn a chip in a week. It's not a problem.
Wow.
So this is ideal for Scrum. So what do they do during the week? It's really more of a design thing. It's a CAD design. It's probably a team working on how do we make this chip work better. It's all computer stuff, and then they have hardware where they can turn the thing on and the chip gets created.
Yeah.
So that's Scrum. Every week you have a new product, right?
Yeah. So, Nicole, do you have an example of Scrum working in a non-IT environment that will probably amaze us?
That will amaze you.
Yeah, I'd like to be amazed.
I'm not sure if this is amazing, but I started at my current customer at the IT departments. It was a coöperatie Dela. And now we are switching to marketing.
Okay.
And that's very different. Marketing Scrum. Well, Scrum is not very different, but the people in marketing are very different from people in IT. So for them...
In what way?
Well, with people in IT, okay, we're going to talk a little bit about stereotypes here, right? But people in IT are quite closed. It's hard to get them talking. So you have to have really good Scrum Masters to, have them speak up in the retrospectives and collaborate. And, sometimes you wonder, how am I going to pull some information out of these guys? Usually it's guys. And in marketing, it's the other way around. These people are so creative and they talk all the time. So here you're more like, how do I make them
to shut up?
That's your words, yes.
Yeah.
But for them also, keeping focus is very difficult. I found they're creative and it goes, all over the place. So we just started, so they're learning. But just making a board like you have here, a Scrum board, and having them focus for weeks. There was a sprint of a week or 2 weeks, depends on the team. Man, they think it's great. It's like, wow, now we know what we're doing. So that works very well.
So one of the questions I have, Jeff, is that I can imagine making small parts for software functionalities that you can build in 2 weeks. Now we have a very big company that's like a very big elephant. So where do you start? Because you have to chop all the work up in little pieces. So how do you start?
So people always tell me, we have these complex products and these complex companies. But we're just publishing now a paper that we did with Saab Defense, who builds the Saab Gripen fighter aircraft with Scrum. Okay,
they built the fighter with Scrum
in 2-week sprints. And this morning at 7:30, their Scrum teams met. There's usually about 8 people, and then at 7:45, their Scrum of Scrums met, which is representatives from 8 teams meet to check in, make sure they're all coordinated. And then at 8 o'clock, the Scrum of Scrums met, which is 8 Scrum of Scrums that have 8 teams.
Yeah,
and they say,
times 64.
So are all of these teams on track and coordinated today? And then at 8:15, the Scrum of Scrums met, and they're checking that everything is on track all the way down. And then at 8:30, the senior management Scrum met to identify any problems in the entire company, and their major objective that day is to get rid of all of them. Okay.
Wow. So if there's a problem in the smallest entity in one of the Scrum teams, then within the hour, it's at the CEO's level.
It's at the CEO level. If it doesn't get fixed somewhere coming up the chain.
Wow.
And if they want to do a test, they can turn around it in the air in 45 minutes. The pilots are co-located with the teams. And so I would argue, having been a fighter pilot, that there are very few things that are people doing out there that are more complicated than one of these airplanes.
Yeah.
So if Saab can do it, for most people, the job's going to be a lot easier.
I can imagine. And you, of course, being a former fighter pilot, do you think it's a great plane?
What do you mean it's a great plane?
Yeah, no, the plane, the jet.
Plane.
Yeah.
Aviation Week says the Saab Griffin's the best plane in the world.
So we bought the wrong one.
Jane's Aviation Weekly says it's the cheapest plane in the world, both initial cost and life cycle. So I had the people from the Department of Defense responsible for trying to fix the F-35 project in the United States. Is that what you guys bought? Mm-hmm. I don't want to undermine American business,
no.
but I can tell you they had a cheat sheet that they were during the class. They went to 3 classes with me in a week and a half. And on the cheat sheet, I could see at the top, budget $1.7 trillion. And then they wouldn't let me see how much the cost overrun was on the F-35. But I know it was public 2 years ago that it was $250 billion, which is probably 5 times the entire amount of money that Saab has spent on the entire history of
unbelievable.
Just the cost overrun. Okay. Yeah. So it's not that we can't build good airplanes. When John Boyd, the world's greatest fighter pilot, was in there in the Pentagon, we were starting to build good airplanes. But now he left, and we lose that focus, that really product ownership, that is get that airplane small, light, fast, maneuverable, make it win. And we have a bunch of people that want this plane to do everything. By the time they put, every feature that anybody can ever imagine, the damn thing doesn't work. It can't dogfight. They've already figured that out. And what they're saying is, this plane will never have to dogfight. It will never have to get close enough to another plane to worry about getting shot down. Let's hope.
Yeah. Yeah, because that's one of the big problems, and the fighter jet that we bought was one of the examples. But also all the big IT projects we have in Holland. We have committees that are researching why it went wrong. There will be political trouble if the results will come. So Scrum solves that. That's what I read. Scrum solves the problem of projects going over budget. But one of the problems, I think, is that we as people, we want to have certainty. We want to know, okay, if I buy this product, will I have it in a year? And my question to you is, what will be your answer? Because Scrum says, well, we'll just start, and along the way we will see how fast we will be going, and then we know when it will be finished.
What Scrum does is, as the title of the book says, twice the work in half the time. So you want this product in a year. We're going to give you the product in 6 months, and it will be much better than what you're thinking you're going to get in a year.
Okay. That's a good answer.
We can't tell you for sure what it's going to look like, but it will be better than you're thinking right now.
And do people believe that because they take all the history of all the projects going wrong, they take it with them, and then somebody comes and says, well, we use Scrum, so it will be ready in half the time.
Well, I don't really worry about this too much because Google, Facebook, Amazon, Apple, and others, they are crushing the competition. They are agile. It doesn't matter whether you believe it. It doesn't matter whether you want certainty. unless you are agile, you are going to get crushed in business. And the sooner the management teams wake up to this and start acting like a fighter pilot instead of
somebody pushing paper.
Yeah, instead of pushing the papers,
Yeah.
the more likely they are to survive as a business.
Yeah. Okay. In a moment, I will ask my last question to Jeff Sutherland, because I want to speak to him about happiness and the importance of that.
I'm going fast. I should find a place to go and rest. Slow down, brother. Slow down if you can't go on.
Slow down. Douwe Bob. Hij gaat ermee naar het Eurovisie Songfestival. En ik ben er wel aan gewend. Ik vind het wel een lekker plaatje.
Let's Talk Business. Op Nieuw Business Radio. Praat mee via @nieuwbusradio.nl.
Jeff Sutherland is in our studio of New Business Radio. We are here at the Agile Chef festival. All about Scrum, all about Agile. Jeff, how is it to be here? Because you started this years and years ago, and now there are a few hundred people here in this nice place in Zaandam. And it's because you started it. If you didn't start it, we wouldn't be here.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me. I mean, I never could have predicted this, that, Scrum is used in every country in the world. I mean, you can go to Timbuktu or Kathmandu, and there are people doing Scrum. And here they told me there were 6 generations of Scrum here in the Netherlands, all the way from the little kids in school.
Yeah. Yeah, we have them because they're in our waiting room. We have them when we let you go to do your other stuff. We'll be talking to them about how to use Scrum at school. One of the things that's in your book is the importance of happiness, and one of the simple things, one of the simple lines in the book is happiness leads to success and not the other way around.
Yeah.
I read a lot. So I also read the book of Sean Accor, who you probably must know because he wrote a whole book about that, The Happiness Advantage.
Yeah.
Why is happiness so important in our work and also in performing?
Well, I was in Sweden some years ago, and they were using the happiness metric as a way to drive financial performance of the company. Because they said happier people make more money, and that's why I said, "Wow, that's kind of interesting." So I went back to my company. I said, "I think we should do the happiness metric in our Scrum retrospective, and we should figure out how to make people happier, because then we'll make more stuff, we'll make more money, all the things that management wants to have."
Yeah.
And my team didn't believe me, so I said, "Well, go out and do some research." Well, they found that the most popular course at Harvard was on happiness. 1,500 people in every class. And the Harvard professors done a ton of research, which showed that it didn't matter who you were, whether you were a doctor, a manager, a salesperson, happier people sold more stuff or made more stuff or diagnosed disease faster. And they did a lot of research on causality. Okay, does happiness cause more production, or does more production make people happy?
Yeah, does it correlate? Yeah.
And it's causal. Happiness causes more production. And on that basis, the team agreed to implement the happiness metric.
Yeah, and how does it work? Because it's part of the Scrum method now.
Well,
so how did you put it in?
It's not part of the formal course Scrum, because the course Scrum says you have a retrospective and you're supposed to identify a process improvement. But we are using the happiness metric, which is a way of identifying the process improvement. And we want to know, for the team, what will make them the most happy in the next sprint. We use that for our Scrum retrospective.
Yeah.
And it really works. Within 3 weeks, the productivity of the team went up 120%.
120% in 3 weeks.
In 3 weeks.
And was there a relation between the happiness metric? Did you see that going up also?
Yes. We ask everybody, how do you feel about your job the last sprint on a scale of 1 to 5? 5 is fantastic, 1 is terrible. And so we measure that for everybody, and we keep track. We have 5 years of data now, and happiness is dripped up. We would like to keep it over 4. And we try to keep it up there. If it starts going down, we know we're going to have problems in production.
Yeah,
So,
it's also a predictor of what's going to happen.
yeah.
So, of course, you are a busy man. You're busy working and still getting Scrum out there. I also heard you talking on stage about energy. You said it should be free for everybody. If you look into the future a bit, and you don't have to predict it, but you can. But I want to know what's your yearning. What are you hoping for that Scrum will accomplish for our world? Because we have a lot of problems in this world also.
Right. Well, the beauty of Scrum is if you can do twice the work in half the time, as the book says, then you can have more of what people need, and you can get it faster.
Mm-hmm.
And my feeling is that all the basic needs for people should be free, just as software is. People should have a roof over their head. They should have food in their belly. They should have schools they can go to. And that should just be built in. And
they're already applauding for you.
Yeah.
We're not finished yet.
And it's possible. And despite, in our American system, it is so competitive and, so driven. The good news about it is that the best people in the system, which are many of them are in Silicon Valley or in the Boston Tech Center, their idea is, just like I mentioned this morning with the open source movement, stuff should be free.
Yeah.
And we should be smart enough to create it in a way that it's accessible to everybody. And creative entrepreneurs can make stuff happen and available. I mean, that iPhone that you probably have has more computing power than a computer that filled this building 30 years ago. Okay? And some creative guy in Silicon Valley put that in your hand.
Yeah.
And the little kids in India have them.
So there's no telling what will happen.
There's no telling what will happen, yeah.
Well, great. Well, it was great having you here, Jeff. We'll probably speak to you in the rest of the day in more depth. But thanks for being here, and enjoy. Have a good time also, because we are here at the Agile Chef. En we schakelen weer naar het Nederlands over. Dat is ook wel fijn voor mijn hersenen, want die moet ook een beetje afkoelen. Jeff Sutherland net in de studio, de bedenker, founding father van Scrum. Ja, we gaan straks praten met een aantal jonge dames, want ze zijn heel jong. Die gebruiken namelijk Scrum op school. Die scrummen hun weg door de middelbare school. Dus dat hoor je straks.
Stereo Mike.